Greetings, thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times for Friday, July 8, 2022. For today's editorial, there's no substitute for classroom teaching. President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. has revealed that the Department of Education is planning a full return to in-person classes in November. Since last year, the DepEd has been easing back to classroom teaching, beginning with schools in areas where the risk of COVID-19 infection is relatively low. Vice President Sara Duterte Carpio, who has assumed the stewardship of the DepEd, must be feeling confident enough to push for the 100% shift to regular classroom instruction before the year ends. The DepEd assures that 38,000 schools will be ready for the transition when the new school year begins in August. By November, the shift should be complete. There is an urgency to bring learners back to the classroom. Distance or remote learning has been a dismal failure, and the sooner it is scrapped, the better. The disruptive impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on education was particularly deep. It forced the closure of schools across the world, and about 1.5 billion children found themselves taking a forced vacation. Countries raced to set up off-classroom programs to keep students from falling behind the learning curve. The DepEd devised a blended system of remote learning based on virtual classes. It was not a perfect solution, but it was better than nothing. As the pandemic wore on, the shortcomings of blended learning were magnified. One UNICEF official noted that with every day that goes by, children unable to access in-person schooling fall further and further behind, with the most marginalized paying the heaviest price. One study said students miss the experience and structure of school in the place-based nature of learning. It was also found that remote schooling does not appeal to students in poorer households that were already coping with domestic behavioral and emotional problems. Many teachers were also not technically skilled enough for online work or were not provided with necessary learning tools. The reality became evident. A computer is no match for a classroom as a place for children to learn. The pandemic triggered a significant learning loss for students, both academically and from a social-emotional standpoint. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was equally wary, saying remote learning might present more risks than in-person instruction related to child and parental mental and emotional health and some health-supporting behaviors. Realizing that virtual classes are no substitute for classroom instruction, then Education Secretary Leonor Briones lobbied hard for a gradual return to face-to-face classroom teaching. But wave after wave of COVID surges forced a series of hard lockdowns, and the Duterte government decided it was still not safe to bring the kids back to school. The Philippines was in fact the last country to return to limited in-person classes. With the pandemic outlook improving, the new administration feels it's time to end the students a long ordeal. Education officials are not the only ones looking forward to the reopening of classrooms. Economic pundits believe the back-to-back school move will also revive commercial trade around schools and spike sales in school supplies. Stalls in Divisoria and Baclaran, traditional bargain hubs, are already experiencing an increase in shoppers looking for school uniforms and shoes. But the enthusiasm must be tempered with caution. We are not out of the woods yet as far as COVID is concerned. Schools have to pass DepEd's screening for COVID mitigation measures to make sure that in-person classes do not turn into super spreader events. There are concerns that because the department is too slow in issuing COVID clearances to schools, the November opening may not be met. The bigger question, however, is whether the government will be able to vaccinate all children of school age before in-person classes reopen. The vaccination of 13.5 million Filipinos ages 12 to 17 started only last November, and the jab rate has been falling. children 5 to 11 years old started getting their shots only last February because of the delay in issuing an emergency use authority for a pediatric vaccine. Returning to classroom classes by November will be one of the early challenges the Marcos administration faces. Let us hope that it is up to the task. And that's the editorial for Friday, July 8, 2022. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print. Subscribe to its digital edition or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the voice of the Times.
Our longest trusted English newspaper since 1898. Now available digitally. Computer. Order the Manila Times Digital Edition. Subscribed. Get the Manila Times Digital Edition for less than 2 pesos and 50 centavos per day when you sign up for 1 year. The Manila Times, news source of choice, trusted since 1898.